The House Committee on Natural Resources, Environment, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation will come to order. Would the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Brodsky.
Here.
Representatives Hill. Arvid. Fall.
Here.
Pies.
Present.
Song. Martin.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 5 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Representative Pies moves to approve the minutes from a previous meeting on December 5th. Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved. First up on our agenda, we're going to be taking up House Bills 4479, 4480, and 6173. They are sponsored by Representative Skaggs and Reingans. We have substitutes for 4479 and 4480 before the committee as well. I believe Rep. Skaggs is here. He was on his way. In that case, we can skip ahead. Is Professor Anthony Kendall here? Oh, I'm sorry, actually. Never mind. Rep. Skaggs, if you want to come up. You're up.
Good morning, Chair Pahutsky, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about House Bills 4479, 4480, and at the chair's leave, 4173. These bills address the critical issue of a statewide septic code for regulation and inspection in Michigan. Look, we all know that Michiganders love water, and we all know that here in Michigan, we are responsible for 20% of the world's freshwater resources. Yet Michigan stands alone as the only state out of all 50 states that doesn't have a uniform statewide septic code. It's hard to believe. Counties have had the ability to pass local ordinances. Unfortunately, only 11 out of Michigan's 83 counties have enacted septic codes that require inspections of any kind. This regulatory gap has been part of the reason why it is estimated that there may be over 300,000 failing septic systems that are polluting groundwater in the state of Michigan. Failing septic systems release untreated wastewater into the environment, contaminating lakes, streams, rivers, and groundwater. Michigan's lack of a uniform code places our environment, public health, and our freshwater resources at significant risk. We all know beaches have been closed, rivers have had no contact orders, and people's health has been put in danger. Dangers posed by failing septic systems are clear. A 2015 Michigan State University study examined 64 watersheds across the Lower Peninsula and found that every single major river in the Lower Peninsula is contaminated with an E. coli strain. Now, I don't know the science behind all of this, but I will trust the scientists. It is the E. coli strain that feeds on human feces. So this is not solely about geese or agriculture. It is about failing septic systems. Areas with higher concentrations of septic systems, and Michigan has the highest use of septic systems per capita in the entire country, show significantly increased and elevated levels of contamination. This impacts residents both in surface water and drinking well water. So this legislation is the third attempt in over 20 years to try to finally add Michigan to the rest of the country with a statewide septic code. And I want to thank Senator Singh and all the stakeholders who worked on this for the last 2 years in an effort to find that center of the Venn diagram, not maybe where everyone is happy, but where we make sure that we have listened to stakeholder input but kept in mind that the goal here is public health. This legislation is not perfect. I understand, as we all do, that change is hard. Finding the center of that Venn diagram is an art without certainty, but I believe that we've gotten to a good place. So House Bills 4479 and 4480 are very similar, although there are some differences I will go over with the Senate version. But they do create a on-site wastewater treatment system code within the public health code. So just briefly, what's in the bills? They create a technical advisory committee, that's 4480, create a technical advisory committee of stakeholders, industry, public health, environmental interests that will make recommendations to EGLE. EGLE will, over time, create an online database that will track septic systems, their locations, and the history and results of evaluations that will be put in by the local health departments. So what systems will be evaluated? And the core difference here is between a periodic system and a time of sale system. The counties that have put in septic codes have put in TOS, time of sale systems, when there's a buy-sell agreement. What this legislation will do, along with the Senate version, is create a hybrid model. A model in which those counties that have a time of sale ordinance will continue to keep their time of sale should they wish, and counties that wish to add on a time of sale ordinance may continue to do so. But we will not rely solely on time of sale ordinances for a whole host of reasons. But we will also have a risk-based evaluation system so that those systems, which common sense tells us are the most likely to be the perpetrators of the vast majority of the septic pollution in Michigan, will be evaluated, tested, inspected. So this risk-based evaluation will be based on several criteria about those systems that are in this bucket. It will include proximity to surface water. So if there is a lake house with a septic system, it will be checked. Proximity to critical dunes, the lack of any known construction permits, so we simply do not know the age of the system, and those systems that are over 30 years old, along with any change of use that increases the burden on those systems. So think about additions that add extra bathrooms or another basement kitchen. So if you get into that risk-based system, then you are involved in a non-time of sale, a periodic inspection. A little bit about the timetable. With the creation of the TAC has 2 years to make their recommendations to EGLE, and EGLE has an additional year to begin the promulgation of rules. Systems will then be able to start being evaluated under the criteria that is laid out in the legislation and the additional criteria that may be added by the department. And it is our goal that these risk-based systems will be evaluated within 5 years. 5 years after rule promulgation, 8 years from when the law goes into effect. So we believe that we have created a system here which understands that we, in many places, are starting from scratch and need to give both industry, that is the private businesses that will be doing the evaluations and sending their reports up to the local health departments, the time to build capacity within that industry, the time to build capacity within the local health departments, so that we are able to ramp up this program going forward. There are two main differences between the House version and the Senate version. Passing the House version allows us to continue to have conversations with the other chambers so that we can come to a collective agreement about that best center of the Venn diagram. Those differences are, one, the timeline. Now, as I told you, we were talking about 3 for rule promulgation, 5 is the goal to complete the risk-based inspections. The Senate version is 10 years instead of 5. So 13 years from the law going into effect instead of 8 years. The other difference is that the Senate version allows for the possibility of a one-and-done inspection if a county decides to opt out after it does its initial inspection. I believe this is extremely, I believe we can do better.
Rep. Skaggs, in the interest of time, if anyone has questions between the Senate and House versions, I assume they'll ask, but I do want to touch on House Bill 6173 quickly, too. So if you can give a brief description of that one.
Just 30 seconds left to finish that thought, then I am done. So that thought is that we want to get to a system that after we find out that a system is 30 years old and it is near a lake, that it is not just inspected once, but is inspected again 10 years later when it is 40 years old and still near the lake. Thank you for your patience, Chair. I will move on to 6173, which is a relatively simple bill to increase transparency in real estate actions by requiring the disclosure of a septic system's last inspection date to the seller. I've discussed this with numerous of my local real estate agents. They consider this best practice already. You can see from the bill that there is a long list of parts of a home that need to be inspected. This simply adds septics to them. It's based on a similar ordinance in Kent County that is working extremely well and has the benefit of making sure that a buyer is thinking and understands that they're buying a home on a septic system. What are the best practices? What is the best way to continue maintenance? So this is part and parcel of an overall package to make sure that we are limiting septic pollution in our groundwater and informing homeowners about the importance of solid septic maintenance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Rep. Skaggs? Yeah, they're about to talk. So do you have a question now, or you want me to keep going?
No, I think it's best for you.
Great. Thank you very much, Rep. Skaggs.
Thank you, Chair.
Next up, Professor Kendall, thank you for your patience. If you want to come up, and if you can keep your comments brief as possible, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair, and the rest of the committee. My name is Anthony Kendall. I'm a professor in Earth and Environmental Sciences at Michigan State University. I've been sampling and conducting computer modeling of water quality in Michigan for 25 years, since straight out of high school here in the Kalamazoo area. A septic system is a tank designed to slow the flow of water along with a drain field that's intended to spread that water out some distance above our saturated groundwater table. And those pieces, it's important that they both function properly. As it is, failing septic systems, are primary sources of human fecal pathogens. We have evidence of this, mentioned by Rep. Skaggs, and many other sources. They're also sources of nitrogen and phosphorus contamination that threaten our ecosystem health and also just generally reduce water quality in Michigan lakes and streams. These contaminants threaten our gastrointestinal health primarily and other aspects of human health, and then of course lead to things like algae blooms that reduce the recreational and other values of the water. As Rep. Skaggs mentioned, back in the early 2010s, we conducted a study across Michigan's Lower Peninsula. We sampled essentially all of the peninsula, and we found traces of human DNA fecal pathogens in every one of the streams that we sampled. And they weren't really just traces, there was quite a bit. We looked at why that might be, and we looked at a whole host of factors. And the number one factor was the number of septic systems in the watershed upstream of that sampling point. And we don't actually think that it's properly maintained septics that are causing problems. We think that it's failing septics or also illicit straight pipe connections that never had a septic system in the first place, which we do find throughout Michigan, unfortunately, to this day. They're not just a rural issue. Many of us in the room today have a septic system. You might not be aware of it. They tend to be actually concentrated most densely at the edges of our large cities and then surrounding our smaller cities as well, places just out of the reach of our sewerage. And in general, studying this has been challenged by the fact that we don't know where they are. There's probably over 1 million, maybe 1.2 million of these. We have no records of that. In contrast, we have a fantastic database started in 1996 for our water wells, the Well Logic database, which now has over 1 million digital records, including both those created before and after. A similar database like that for septics would make an enormous difference for people trying to understand their water quality as well as make decisions about improving it. These bills, 4479 and 4480, will standardize installation practices, the systems that are allowed to be installed, which will actually allow innovation in that front to help design new systems and get them passed and adopted that will do better than our current conventional systems do. They'll improve the health of our humans, people, using the water, especially children who tend to actually suffer the most because they play with their mouths open. And then it'll also have important effects on our economy. It'll boost the value of those areas, of those waters for recreational and tourist activity, which in some of the parts of the state are the major source of income. And those are also places where septics proportionately are providing the largest pollution source in those watersheds. I provided some written comments to you all, or sent them to your offices, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Professor Kendall? All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, wishing to speak neutral on 4479 and opposing 6173 is Brad Ward from the Michigan Realtors.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Brad Ward with the Michigan Realtors. We have been involved in these discussions on a statewide code for, I think, approaching 30 years now. Not that I was around for all of those, but the work group meetings have been very good. These bills, I think I would be more readily classifying our position as support in concept. I think there's still a number of at least technical fixes on some major and key definitions within these bills that we would like to see changed. We've provided those to the work group and the bill sponsors. Our folks, our realtors, work across the state. They work across many counties, local health department, jurisdictions, and so it is a patchwork quilt of regulation depending on where you go. And that patchwork quilt has not resulted in clean water. Our folks also sell the state of Michigan, and they know very well that one of our biggest selling points is the water that we have here, and so that's why we support the approach of a statewide code. This is important because it creates uniform definitions of failure, uniform inspection criteria, and importantly for our housing crisis, approval of alternative systems, which can turn out cleaner water and still allow building on properties that may otherwise not be buildable given setbacks for your normal tank and field. What we would really like to see in this is the periodic inspections, but we understand that that is a point of contention with a lot of the stakeholders. Periodic inspections will make sure that all septic systems in the state of Michigan are inspected on a regular basis, and it moves us away from point-of-sale ordinances that, again, a patchwork quilt, result in things like buyers and sellers not being able to close on properties, handcuffing folks to property that they may not have the funds to repair a failing septic system should a problem be found at closing. So if we are going to go in the direction of not phasing out point-of-sale ordinances in favor of moving to a high-risk based inspection criteria, I think we would seek additional language added to the bill to kind of put a framework around those local point-of-sale ordinances to make sure that the deed can transfer and the parties are able to negotiate that out at the closing table when a problem is found. Moving on to the seller disclosure bill, this has not been part of the discussions of the work group up to this point. This is a statewide form that is used in every real estate transaction. Every realtor, every real estate agent in the state of Michigan is trained on this form. It is a uniform form that is prescribed by statute. You can't change any of the words in there. There's case law that backs it up. It is not one of the forms that our members just like kind of throwing open. It is a long considered discussion when we open up the seller disclosure form because of how long it's been in place and the language that is in there. Given that this is a fairly new concept, our members haven't had time to look at this. On its face, just simply asking when the last time it was inspected is kind of what the addition would add. If we are moving away from a periodic inspection, and depending on which version of the bill we end up with, the Senate bill that allows a county to do one and done, or a periodic inspection, it may not make sense to just make this change in the Seller Disclosure Act immediately. Also, given the fact that we could be 8 years out or 13 years out from actually implementing what's in these two bills. So we're opposed to the change in the seller disclosure form at this point of time. And I thank you very much for allowing me to testify, and be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Brad? Seeing none, thank you very much, Brad.
Thanks so much.
Lastly, wishing to speak in support of 4479 and 4480, Larry Stevens from Maura. And Mr. Stevens, I apologize, but if you can keep your comments to about 2 minutes, I'd really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Larry Stevens. I'm a consulting engineer locally. Have been operating a local engineering business for 44 years now, and have over 50 years of experience in on-site wastewater treatment. I'm also a member of MAURA, past president of MAURA, and I have enough information on the membership of MAURA that which is a group of professionals that support in education and training for on-site professionals. I'd like to add a different twist to this support for the bills, and I fully support them, and MAURA supports them. Please consider this, that on-site wastewater treatment systems are all custom designed systems for a large set of variables on every site. The lot size, the soils, the drainage, the home or business size, number of people, all go into the proper design of an on-site treatment system. And these systems cost anywhere from a low, probably around $10,000 these days, to high numbers I've seen in the neighborhood of $60,000, $70,000, even $80,000. Our local county has some money that's providing grants for design and construction of systems for those that can't afford to repair their systems. And I'm one of 2 engineers that have been approved to design systems for these projects. I've been informed that the county has completed the full installation of 9 complete septic systems this year, and the average cost of these repairs and replacements is $42,491. $42,491. All are designed by an experienced engineer because of the site complexities. But here's the point worth noting. Currently, there are no educational or experience standards to assure that the people designing, permitting, installing, and maintaining those systems, other than the pumpers have some educational requirements, but all the other practitioners in the field do not have any educational experience standards that qualify them to do their part. The wastewater system for a home is easily the most expensive appliance, if you can call them that, and likely the only one that's custom designed for all those variables.
Mr. Stevens, I'm sorry, I appreciate you being here and I appreciate your testimony, but if you can wrap it up, we're going to have to move on.
Okay. I think it's important that one of the important aspects of these bills is the creation of a set of education and training certification standards for all the practitioners involved in these, because I've come across many systems in my experience that have been prematurely failed as a result of a poor design or construction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. At this time, I will take a motion to adopt the H2 substitute for House Bill 4479. Motion made by Vice Chair Hill. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion of adopting the substitute, Chair Putsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arvid.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. The H2 substitute is adopted.
Thank you very much. I will take a motion to report House Bill 4479 as substitute H2 with recommendation. Motion made by Representative Arbit. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Putsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song. Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 4479 is reported with recommendation as substituted.
Thank you very much. Next up, I'll take a motion to adopt the H1 substitute for House Bill 4480. Motion made by Representative Song. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion of adopting the substitute, Chair Putsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. The H2 substitute is adopted.
Thank you very much. Next up, I'll take a motion to report House Bill 4480 as substitute H1 with recommendation. Motion made by Representative McFall. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Putsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 4480 is reported with recommendation as substituted.
Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda, we have House Bill 6122, which is sponsored by Representative McKinney. I believe Zvanko, and Zvanko, I'm sorry, I've known you for 6 years, and I'm not trying to pronounce your name today. So Z, if you want to come on up and present. We also have Sydney Hart and John Olson from Eagle here to testify as well. Thank you all very much.
All right. Good morning. My name is Svanko Blazewski, and I'm the Legislative Director for State Representative Donovan McKinney. Thank you, Chair Pohutsky, Vice Chair Hill, Minority Vice Chair Martin, and members of the committee for allowing me to make some brief comments on House Bill 6122. House Bill 6122 would put Michigan in compliance with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's requirement for states to remove their affirmative defense provisions from their EPA-approved Title V programs and from individual operating permits. The bill was requested by the Air Quality Division of Eagle. To speak more about the bill, I have with me Eagle's team to speak more.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay from over here? Perfect. So Sydney Hart, Legislative Liaison, Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and I have John Olson with me. He's our Environmental Quality Analyst with our Air Quality Division. And so, as Vanko mentioned, the US EPA came to us and they had a mandate that they implemented in 2023 that requires the states to remove any statutes, provisions, or rules related to affirmative defense from any of our Title V operating permits. And so, John, if you could just explain really briefly for the what Title V operating permits look like.
Yeah, so essentially, can you hear me all right? Okay, good. Essentially a Title V operating permit. It's a comprehensive regulatory framework under the Clean Air Act that requires major sources of pollution to obtain an operating permit that includes essentially emissions limits and also other compliance requirements.
And so, as part of the affirmative defense provisions under the Title V of Clean Air Act, the affirmative defense essentially allowed these sources to avoid any liability instituted under like an enforcement action as long as it was deemed an emergency situation. And so they would have to provide adequate demonstration that the emergency situation prevented them from operating in a proper manner that met the emission requirements. And they would then have to show that they took action to address the situation in a timely manner. And so the US EPA made this decision because they felt that it would maintain the integrity of their enforcement and structure while also avoiding any imposition on the authority of the court system. And so, John, do you have any examples of how this would be used that you would be able to share with the committee, the affirmative defense provision?
Yeah. So essentially, the affirmative defense provisions, although they're baked into Michigan's Title V Part 70 Renewable Operating Permit Program through Section 55527 of the Act, essentially, although this is within that, those provisions were in that Part 70, of the facilities that have actually incorporated this provision within their operating permits, there haven't been actual cases where facilities have utilized this provision to safeguard themselves against an enforcement violation and associated penalties. So this removal of this provision won't have a significant impact on industry. But within the rulemaking itself, EPA noted that states still have the authority to utilize enforcement discretion in determining whether to cite a violation and move forward with enforcement proceedings against a facility. So that enforcement discretion would essentially act as a substitute for this provision.
And then, John, could you just touch on what it would mean if the department didn't have the ability to remove the affirmative defense provision?
Yeah, definitely. So if House Bill 6122 is not passed and these provisions are essentially remain within Section 5527 of Michigan Act 451, this would mean that the state could receive federal highway funding sanctions from the EPA under Sections 502D and I of the Clean Air Act. And EPA could also potentially withdraw approval of Michigan's Part 70 Renewable Operating Permit Program as well.
So hopefully we were able to answer any questions that would have come up in our testimony, but if there's any outstanding questions, happy to take them at this time.
Does anyone have any questions? Representative Hill.
Approximately how many facilities would be under have these kind of permits, and can you speak to the volume of emissions that we're talking about, or the location of them?
Yeah. On hand, I don't have the number of the facilities that actually have this provision included within their operating permits, but this provision only applies to facilities that experience an emergency situation within their operations that they do not have control over. So to the extent of what, or the quantity, in terms of the quantity of emissions that could result, I guess I can't necessarily speak to that, but this provision has not been enacted in the past and has not been used by any facility that has it within its permit, within its operating permit. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Rep. Pies, do you have a question? Rep. Preston, do you have a question? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Could you give me an example of how this works on the system? And then a two-part secondary to that is, you mentioned discretionary action subsequent with this change. How are you going to quantify, and how broad is that discretion? What metrics are you using to apply that discretion?
Well, enforcement discretion is, I think, the authority that we have to use enforcement discretion is fairly broad. I think we do have kind of a limits to that discretion as well. But for the cases of emergency situations where a facility does emit in excess of their emission limits or compliance requirements, Michigan, we could potentially overlook that situation and not cite that facility for a violation and not proceed with or move forward with enforcement proceedings. Could you repeat the first portion of your question?
The first one is an example of, the consequence of this change on the current system, if you have an example that you could cite.
Yeah. Based on the history of and the lack of the use of the provision, there wouldn't necessarily be a consequence. Also because of kind of EPA citing and noting that enforcement discretion could be used as a substitute for the removal of the affirmative defense provision. So there shouldn't be any major consequence to industry because it's kind of one provision is being substituted for with the discretion. Yeah.
Any further questions? All right, thank you all very much. Not wishing to speak supporting the bill is Emily Smith from the Michigan Environmental Council. At this point, I will take a motion to report House Bill 6122 with recommendation. Motion made by Representative Song. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Pohutsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arvid.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 0 nays to pass. House Bill 6122 is reported for recommendation.
Thank you very much. Next up, we're going to take up House Bills 6229 and 6230, sponsored by Representative O'Neill and myself. There is an H1 substitute for House Bill 6230 that just rounds up the fee amounts because it turns out the Secretary of State does not like working in cents. But in the interest of time, I'm going to forego my own testimony on that and leave it up to the DNR. But first up, so that you can get back to the other business I'm sure you have, Rep. Beeson would like to testify in opposition to 6229.
Thank you, and thanks, Chair, for having me. There actually is some venison jerky up there. I'm hoping they'll share when belly gets full.
I do appreciate your venison jerky. Thank you.
I'm testifying on this because not only I'm a state rep, I still actually process deer. I am in the field every day. I hung up yesterday an example of all my licenses I currently hold with the state of Michigan, not just my food license, but actually every license that I try to get out and enjoy the outdoors. And I actually had to lower my price this year, and the DNR are going to talk about how that they don't have to or they want to go up and how to maintain. And listen, folks, you don't raise prices on something and expect more of these deer to get harvested. It's just the opposite. And I think that if we really think we got to come up with a better approach than pricing people out. And if you look at some of the price fees that you guys have increased, I have the oldest population in the entire state. I'm proud of the 62.5 that I represent. I have the oldest one. And this is going to raise some of the rates more than 50%. That's not how we get more people in it or continue to do it with the young people. We also, if you look at this, we changed the age limit from 17 to 16. These kids barely have jobs, and some of them, this is their out. Right there at the Boys and Girls Club, this is their out. They get to go fishing. Now we're lowering the price and adding more cost. Think about what we're doing. And I was always told that you teach a person to fish or hunt, they'll eat and they'll live off our land. And I love that. And I did it right here to show everybody. I had to meet the customer where they're at. They can't afford the $150 processing fee, which can be a lot more. And I love showing people how to do it because it's not that hard. And I bought all the stuff to do it, to process your own deer. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not that expensive. And they can actually do it in the price of one deer, one process, one animal. But even with fish, and you have to meet them where they're at. Raising these prices are not going to be beneficial to our deer population. They're not going to save more deer from hitting your car. I think it's going to be an opposite approach, and it's going to get more people out of it because when you increase something that was $20 to $30, they look twice. And I have 2 doe tags right now and 2 buck tags, and I buy them even though I don't even shoot them, just because in case I want to get my hands dirty, I want to do it and make sure that I bring enough for everybody. So I'm opposing all this about the fee increase, especially the price to the seniors and to the kids. In the middle, I could probably get there with that on the middle price for the people that are still working. But when you're on a fixed income and you're going to more than double your price, and I look in this room and there's a lot of close to seniors in here, I think that this is a bad investment for the state of Michigan, and I'm excited to work with the DNR coming the next term to find a better solution. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Thanks very much, Rep. Beeson. Next up, wishing to speak in support of the bill is Taylor Ritterbusch from the DNR.
All right, thank you, Chair Pohutsky and members of the committee. Again, I'm Taylor Ritterbusch with the Department of Natural Resources, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk to you about House Bill 6229 and 6230. These bills are critical to the department and the state of Michigan to maintain important conservation activities, prevent a reduction in our services and programming, and provide expanded outdoor recreation opportunities and access across the state. House Bill 6229 seeks to address a necessary and overdue update to our hunting and fishing license fees. The last time the legislature approved a license fee increase was in 2014. In the decades since, inflation and hyperinflation have had a severe impact on our fisheries and wildlife divisions. I'll offer up two of many examples to demonstrate the challenges that our agency faces. Fish food for the tens of millions of fish produced and stocked by our hatchery system is up between 50 and 150% since 2018. And the cost per acre for our wildlife division to do habitat work has doubled since 2017 due to the cost of staffing and commodity costs on things like diesel fuel, gravel, fertilizer, and seed. Our proposal would catch us up in terms of inflation and protect against inflationary pressures in the future. We would like to tie license fees to the Consumer Price Index, much like the Recreation Passport, the annual pass for our state parks, that adjusts annually by statute to account for inflation. As our experience has been with Recreation Passport fees, hunting and fishing license fees costs would likely go up by $1 every 2 to 3 years if this CPI adjustment were included. House Bill 6230 addresses watercraft registration fees. These fees have remained stagnant since 1993, failing to keep pace with inflation and modern boat design. This funding supports planning, facility placement, and water safety efforts. The evolving trend in the size and features of pontoon boats over the last 2 decades is considered in the proposed fee structure to align with the transformation of these boats into larger, more recreational watercraft. As Michiganders, natural resources bind us together and define us. Our woods, waters, our fish and wildlife are more than just features on the natural landscape. They're part of who we are. They are the lifelines to our communities and our local economies. Properly funding conservation efforts isn't just an investment in the environment, it's an investment in our health, our future, and the heritage we leave for our kids. Let's come together to champion this cause, knowing that every dollar spent on conservation is an investment in the Michigan we know and love. And I've got our Fisheries Chief, Randy Claremont, and Keith Kintai here to take any questions that you might have.
Does anybody have any questions for the department? Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for being here. So raising costs, I just go along with what Representative Beeson said. We want to encourage people to get out there and use our resources. So tying it to the CPI, for example, takes it out of the legislature and makes it automatic increases. But the CPI doesn't always take into account the things you just mentioned. Fuel, for example, diesel fuel is not even in the CPI. Fuel is not calculated in the CPI. So logical, reasonable legislative responses would be taken out of any increase yet. Also, the increase, I'd like to know a cost difference between our auto insurance for car deer accidents and the cost that the DNR would be raising. For the citizen, which is the beneficent? Are they going to get less insurance costs and save money because there's less deer accidents because we've harvested deer? Or is the cost of the deer license going to prevent them and offset anything they would save in car insurance? I mean, for the actual consumer, is this a product that they're going to actually have dollars in their pocket? Also, if we had property owners that live out of state but pay property taxes in the state and could hunt and encourage them to hunt more and give them a resident license, could we increase the number of hunters? Increasing the number of hunters would increase our fees because we had more licenses sold, and could we start generating money that way?
All right, I'll try to address as much as I can there. On the CPI note, I think for us, knowing that the typical cadence of a fee increase for the department has been every 10 years, we don't have any stability built in over that time to combat against inflation. So you're right, we might have fluctuations in diesel prices, in other seed prices, things like that, but we don't have anything that helps us adjust over time subsequent to the legislature taking action that allows for us to have some sort of planning efforts so that we know that, okay, we've had high inflation over the last year, we can expect a $1 increase across these license types, and we can build that into our budget for the subsequent year. To your comments about auto insurance, I have no expertise in that area, so I probably wouldn't be able to speak on that with any bit of accuracy. But I'll pass it over to Keith and Randy to fill in some other blanks.
Yeah, certainly. Hello, Randy Claremont, Fisheries Chief, DNR. I can't speak to the auto industry question, but I can definitely speak to the changes in the price point of these licenses. Although it is talked about as they're excessive, really, when you look at hunting and fishing license fees across the U.S., Michigan is a bargain. For what we have to offer and for what the user pays, it is low. We are on the bottom end of it. So $13 additional for a fishing license is an insignificant cost relative to everything else that we pay for. And the price and the money goes back into supporting a $1 billion industry. Fishing alone brings $2.5 billion to the state, and we're actually increasing the angler participation and steady, if not increasing, in hunter participation in this last year. If you look at the questions that were asked by Rep. Beeson on lowering the age from 17 to 16, the mechanism behind that is all U.S. states have actually lowered the age by which an angler is required to get a license. They did so not as an income driver for the state, but to compete for federal funding through Dingell Johnson and Pittman Robinson. Michigan is at the high end at 17. We're losing federal funding. So really by lowering the age to 16, we're trying to be more competitive and will bring federal dollars to help us manage fish and wildlife in the state of Michigan.
Keith Kentai, Assistant Chief Wildlife Division. Just to add on to what Randy said, the deer license specifically is the most important hunting license in terms of revenue. And as Randy mentioned, it's a bargain when you look at comparisons to other states. At $20, it's the cheapest in the region, where licenses range from $24 to $39. And the department and others' research on hunter recruitment, retention, reactivation shows that hunting licenses and hunting license cost is not an impediment to participation. And when you look at the costs that are being spent for hunting, it's really the lowest cost that a person is spending. A trail cam is $100 plus $15 a month for the fee. You're spending $75 to fill up your pickup truck. $30 cost for a deer license is really insignificant when you look at all the hunting costs that go into participation.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Representative McFall.
Thank you, Chair. So it isn't that I don't support this, because I understand the points that you guys are making, but I have to kind of agree with Rep. Beeson, because isn't there like less people hunting now, and so if we increase the prices, won't that even lead to more less people?
No, I don't think that's the case at all. So a couple of things. There is a nationwide trend. 1 to 2% of a decline in hunters and anglers. To Randy's point, we've seen an increase in anglers here in Michigan, and we've maintained relatively stable coming out of COVID on the hunting side of things. In addition, studies have shown that, again, to reiterate, that the cost of the license is not a barrier to entry and does not deter people from choosing to go hunting or fishing.
Is that study in Michigan specific, or is that a nationwide study?
There's a nationwide study, including Michigan data.
Okay, thank you.
Rep. Preston?
Thank you. Well, I can tell you from somebody that's owned a store in the middle of nowhere, had a DNR permit, and went through the 2014 change when they changed over to the base license, hunter participation plummeted after that change. Every time we change the prices to these licenses, and to the Director of Fisheries, to put our kids in a position where they have to pay for licenses in order for you to harvest federal dollars, I think is horrible. These kids are at a juncture in life where they're going to determine whether or not they're going to be a long-term fisherman or not. And we're going to start charging them at a time when they can fish for free in order to harvest federal dollars. That's just not fair to our constituents. That's not fair to the children. That's not fair to the families. That's not fair to the kid that thinks that he can fish at the age, goes out, gets pulled over by the CO, and gets a ticket. Because that's what's going to happen. At the end of the day, since the 2014 change, living in Cedar River, I watched our deer hunting population completely drop. I mean, it dropped by more than 50% in the span of 2 years. All of it was thrown on the base license, and there's the aggravating costs and the lesser product. The deer aren't out there, the game management isn't out there, the product is not better all the way around. I do not support these in any way, shape, or form, and I've lived on the front lines of all of this.
Representative, with all due respect, I think we do have numbers that support that even with the implementation of the base license that we did not see a plummet in license purchases. I think a lot of that is anecdotal. I think we have a lot of anecdotal examples to the contrary. But again, I know that that probably doesn't add a lot of value in a back and forth.
It's not anecdotal though. When
we're not. If you have a question, that's fine, but we don't have time for debate. I'm really sorry. You can take it offline if you need to. Thank you, Rep. Pressman. Are there any other? Vice Chair Hill.
Thank you. Again, we're talking about $20 to $30, correct?
Yes, that's correct. On the deer license, I'm assuming you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things about fishing that I think it's important to clarify, if you could please speak to this, is how many naturally reproducing streams do we have, particularly in the lower peninsula? I know there are some in the upper peninsula, but how many naturally reproducing fish habitats do we have versus the stocking program that makes it possible for people to even be able to fish? And how many millions of fry are put out, or excuse me, there's different terms for the babies, but how many fish are put out every year so that we even have fish in Michigan?
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, Representative Hill, is yes, we've seen some degradation of the habitat that's led to demise of the fishery. And that's why we have 6 state fish hatcheries that rear over 30 million fish. Without this license package, we are in jeopardy of losing that fish production. We will not see stocking of walleye, muskie, the salmonids, trout and salmon that we have seen in the past. It's a vital part of our fisheries management program, and actually anglers across the state have asked us not why do we stock so many fish, but how come we can't stock more? We've seen a positive benefit to not only deal with streams that have lost natural reproduction, but to bring those streams back to healthy states where then they can sustain fisheries, and our stocking programs have done that. Saginaw Bay is a great example. That walleye fishery is remarkable today because of a 40-year stocking program. Thank you.
And how much does that stocking program cost?
It costs about a third, a little bit more than a third of our budget. So our budget's about $30 million, and it costs about $12 million to sustain the 6 state fish hatcheries. We used to have over 40 hatcheries, and we declined now to just 6.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Rep. Pies, can you keep it brief, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do I understand correctly that this bill would cut a discount for seniors from 60% to a 25% discount?
Yes, that's correct. And we've got a couple of things to back that up. So,
what do you mean back it up?
Well, I'm getting there.
Okay.
So back in 2000, about 8% of our license purchasers qualified for that discount. Now it's over 20%, so it's a larger share. That actually, those are the folks that tend to be the hardest on our resources, right? They're retirees that have the time to go out to fish the same lake maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week, catch their limit. And so they are having a kind of disproportionately larger impact on the resource. Now, I think that is one thing that we are totally open to having a conversation with the legislature in a substitute to stir up that down so it's not that initial jump from a 60% discount down to 25. But I think that's something that also puts us much closer aligned to what other states have for senior discounts.
Thanks. I just have to say that I'm really unhappy with this, and I hope we can revisit it at some point. I have seniors who have stopped driving because they can't afford it, seniors who won't go to a movie or anything. This is a huge cut, even though they have the time.
Absolutely, and we would be totally open to a floor substitute to address that.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I see that Amy Trotter has already submitted written testimony. The Michigan United Conservation Clubs support 6229 in concept. Folks can please refer to that written testimony. There are some cards to read in. Not wishing to speak in support of 6229, Mark Smith of the National Wildlife Federation, Captain Denny Arnold from the Michigan Charter Boat Association, Dave Peterson of the Great Lakes Council of Fly Fishers International, B.B. Frederick of the Safari Club International, Todd Johnson of the National Deer Association, and not wishing to speak opposing the bill is Andrew Varmish from the Michigan Farm Bureau. Not wishing to speak supporting both bills, Emily Smith of MEC, George Lindquist of the UP Whitetails of Marquette County, Tim Minotis of the Michigan Sierra Club, Nikki Poland of the Michigan Boating Industries Association, John Stegerwald to the Michigan Woodcock Society and the Ruffled Grouse Society. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Rich Bowman of the Nature Conservancy, and Bob Matthews of the Congressional Sportsman Foundation. I will now take a motion to report House Bill 6229 with recommendation. Motion made by Representative Song. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Pohutsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 6229 is reported for recommendation.
Thank you very much. I will now take a motion to adopt the H1 sub for 6230. Motion made by Representative McFall. Please call the vote, Madam Clerk.
On the motion of adopting the substitute, Chair Pohutsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. The H1 substitute is adopted.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, I'll now take a motion to report House Bill 6230 as a substitute with recommendation. Motion made by Representative McFall. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Pohutsky.
Yes.
Representatives Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, you have 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 6230 is reported for recommendation as substituted.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Last but not least on our agenda, we will hear testimony on House Bill 5923, which is sponsored by Representative Miller. We have an H1 sub before the committee as well. Here to testify on the representative's behalf is her Legislative Director, Jackson Powell, and Van Buren Township Supervisor, Kevin McNamara.
My name is Jackson Paul. I'm Rep. Miller's Legislative Director. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here due to a conflict with another committee. I'm here today on her behalf to voice our support for House Bill 5923, which creates a new definition in statute for low-activity radioactive waste and bans that waste from being disposed of in Michigan's Class 2 and Class 3 landfills. I wanted to note that Type 3 landfills are not currently listed in this substitute, but Rep. Miller plans to update this with a floor amendment. This bill is a critical step forward towards addressing public health, environmental protection, and stakeholder concerns while establishing clear and enforceable guidelines. This bill would define low-activity radioactive waste as materials rendered radioactive through neutron exposure, such as soils, construction materials, or water. By focusing on both of the type of material and the method of its creation, we provide clarity and ensure stakeholder concerns, particularly regarding TNORM policy, are met with transparency and precision. The outright prohibition of disposing of low-activity radioactive waste in Type 2 and Type 3 landfills is a necessary safeguard for our community's health and safety. These facilities were not designed to handle radioactive materials, and this prohibition prevents potential contamination of soil and groundwater resources. Furthermore, requiring testing and monitoring of legacy waste in landfills ensures that past activities do not pose ongoing risks to the environment or public health. The proposed renewal and modification processes for landfills operating licenses are a significant advancement in ensuring safety. Requiring a radiation safety program, annual reporting, and compliance with EGLE guidelines ensures that landfills maintain rigorous oversight and accountability that confirm that our residents are safe. This bill also lowers permissible limits for radionuclides, such as radium-226, radium-228, to 25 picocuries per gram, down from the current 50 picocuries per gram, and reduces lead-210 down to 130 picocuries per gram, down from the current 260 picocuries. By incorporating these strict standards, robust monitoring, and enhanced transparency, we can make tremendous strides in protecting our environment, residents, and communities. Our office has been working on this legislation with EGLE, supportive and opposition stakeholders, and our community residents. We urge you to support these changes and prioritize the health and safety of our communities and ecosystems. I appreciate you guys for your time, for your consideration, and again, we have Supervisor Kevin McNamara here from Van Buren Township to talk about some of the concerns that his residents are facing.
Thank you. Thank you. Honored to be here. Thank you, Chair. Kevin McNamara, Supervisor of Van Buren Township. I'm going to start from 2017. Snyder put together a group to decide what low-level radioactive was going to be, and the state of Michigan did a very good thing. They figured out what they're going to do and how they're going to handle their own waste. So they voted to allow this waste into landfills. What they didn't see happening was New York was saying, no, we're not taking this. Ohio's not going to take it. Pennsylvania's not going to take it. Indiana's not going to take it. They all shipped it here. So when we were talking about taking 1,000, a couple of loads a month into these landfills, 10,000, 20,000 tons of maybe a year. We've now accepted almost 1 million tons of low-level radioactive in the state of Michigan, not from the state of Michigan. It's coming here, and it's coming faster and faster. The U.S. Army just declared Michigan as one of the only landfills, except on the hazardous side of it, to send the stuff to. It is the only landfill east of the Mississippi. That means you're going to get 90% of the low-level radioactive. This doesn't fix our problem, but this at least puts a little bit of a cap on it to start slowing this stuff down. What we really need is a moratorium to punt and figure out where we're going from here. But right now, we need to slow this monster down. It's just growing too fast. I'm here with a lot of residents that wish we could do more, but I'm sorry, but this at least is something to start. I'm hoping you back it. Thank you.
Representative McFall has a question? No. Oh, sorry, I thought you did. Minority Vice Chair Martin has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I understand in the state of Michigan, we charge the same tipping fee for out of state as we do in state. So if somebody wants to drop their waste in here, I mean, is that something that could be looked at to try to solve some of this and lower it? Also, in the future, I'm just going to pick on solar panels to pick on solar panels. There's a lot of rare earth metals, a lot of heavy metals in there, and a lot of technical manufacturing that, you know, we even give off some radiation. So at what level and a concentration would the tipping fee be cheaper for them to dispose of versus the cost of recycling some of those things because they are recyclable? You know, would that all be factored into maybe reducing the waste that goes in the landfill?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So just to clarify, we do have a separate piece of legislation that's not in front of us right now. It's House Bill 5333, which does increase tipping fees. Unfortunately, as you know, and I think what we're getting at is we cannot explicitly regulate out-of-state waste any differently than we regulate in-state waste due to Interstate Commerce Clause. In 5333, if I can speak to that right now,
can you keep it very brief? We're not actually here to talk about tipping fees, guys.
No, of course. So that would raise the fee, and the idea being it would disincentivize out-of-state waste. But again, this bill, 5923, explicitly is only for low-activity radioactive waste. Does that help?
I just want to make sure we keep our eyeball on 20 years from now when solar panels start being decommissioned. They do give off some, you know, radioactive low level because of the heavy metals and the rare earth metals. And concentrations into a landfill, if that would be enough to be triggering some
MTA worked on this also, right? I mean, there was quite a few other groups that worked on this to make sure that we have to take care of Michigan's needs also. So that's still in here. I'd love to see a complete ban, but the reality is we do need some disposal here.
This legislation does set limits on a few explicit radioactive materials. Our office would certainly be willing to look at further materials that we can exclude, limit, or ban.
Are there other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. I do have some cards to read in. Not wishing to speak in support of the bill, Tim Minotis from the Michigan Sierra Club. Not wishing to, wishing to speak in opposition is, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble reading this. Michigan Against Atomic Waste. And I'm sorry, if you can introduce yourself as well.
My name is Janine Rippey. I'm a resident of Van Buren Township. Thank you to the chair and the committee for allowing me to speak.
And my name is Jessica Peterson. Janine's going to be speaking on behalf of herself. I've formed the group Michigan Against Atomic Waste, and I'd like to spend a minute speaking on that as well.
If you can both keep it to 2 minutes, we are running out of time.
Okay. I just wanted to, one, thank Reggie Miller for her efforts to prepare this bill. Initially, it was addressing the T-norm. T-norm is the component of radioactive waste that comes from the Manhattan Project, the production of the atomic bomb. So we have received a lot of T-norm waste in 2.4 miles from where I live. I also live on Belleville Lake. I'm very concerned because T-norm contains uranium-238, radium-226, a number of radioactive components that have a very high half-life. So that means essentially that it will be jeopardizing our water and our environment for many lifetimes, beyond my lifetime, beyond all of our lifetimes. The half-life of uranium-238 is 4.468 billion years. So this is also located, this landfill is also located adjacent to Interstate 94. It's on top of the Huron Valley watershed, which feeds Belleville Lake. Belleville Lake feeds Detroit River feeds Lake Erie, and Lake Erie feeds Lake Ontario. It's adjacent to the Willow Run Airport, adjacent to community baseball fields, adjacent within a mile of 2 schools. And according to the U.S. Census, there's over 367,000 people living within 10 miles of this extremely dangerous landfill where we are putting T-norm. So I'm gonna just make it high level, but these components are all dissolvable in water. So the Wayne Disposal, the landfill 2.4 miles from my home that is accepting this waste, they have a leachate system where they collect the water and it discharges to 2 different points. They're permitted with NPDES permits. However, those permits do not require them to treat or test for any radionuclides. So one of those outlets goes to the Detroit River through the South Huron Valley Utility Authority, where it's also not treated or tested for radionuclides. The other one is called Quirk Drain. Quirk Drain has an east and a west vein, and they drain directly into the lake in which I live, which feeds to the Great Lakes.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on, so can you?
Yeah, my main key concern is that we are potentially contaminating the Earth's fresh water, which Rep. Skaggs said at the beginning, 21% of the Earth's fresh water comes from the Great Lakes. We are potentially, by allowing this to continue, this radioactive dumping at this site, we are potentially contaminating 21% of the Earth's fresh water.
Thank you. I'm sorry, we have to move on.
Okay, well, I just want to make the record clear. Michigan Against Atomic Waste is not opposing the bill. Janine Rippey is opposing the bill, but it's important to note that this specific landfill is very unique. There's only 5 of them, so we need to put some more safeguards in place. And I appreciate the work with Reggie Miller.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My concern with...
I'm sorry, we have to move on. Thank you.
The specific changes is this new...
Thank you. We're going to move on now. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bill, Mike Witkowski from the Michigan Manufacturers Association. Not wishing to speak, opposing the bill, Jamie DeShane from the Michigan Chemistry Council, Kevin Kendall from the Michigan Waste Recycling Association, Tim Langholz from NFIB, and Marcus Keach from the Grand Rapids Chamber. With that, I will take a motion to adopt the H1 substitute for HB 5923, motion made by Representative Pies. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion of adopting the substitute, Chair Puhutsky.
Yes.
Representative Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song. Yes. Martin.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Madam Chair, 6 yeas, 0 nays to pass. The H1 substitute is adopted.
Thank you very much. I will take a motion to report House Bill 5923 as substitute H1 with recommendation. Motion made by Vice Chair Hill. Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Puhutsky.
Yes.
Representative Hill.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
McFall.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Song.
Yes.
Martin.
No.
Preston.
No.
Madam Chair, 6 yeas, 2 nays, 0 pass. House Bill 5923 is reported for recommendation as substituted.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We have no absent members to excuse, and also this will be our last committee meeting, so I want to thank you all for all of your work over these last 2 years. It has been an honor to lead the committee, and I look forward to continue working with you all as we finish up Lame Duck. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.